Started. All right. So, yay, here we go, y'all. Thank you
All
so,
right.
so much for showing up on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. I thought, we were talking about how beautiful it was, and I was thinking maybe gloomy weather would encourage people to come, but it looks like even with the sun, here you are, and I just want to thank you for that. I'm really excited about this first inaugural Zoom-posium on the arts and social justice. I just would like to let you know some of our special guests and our panel of experts that we have here for you today. First of all, we have a Vonnie McWilliams Jamison is our special interview guest. I see you over there. Hi, Vonnie. And so she's been very generous with her time and her information. She's a Mobile native. She lived in Chicago for 39 years and has been back here for 15. She is on the board at Central High School, where they actually give scholarships to go to attend Bishop. So that's kind of a neat connection that she has with Bishop. And also she works for Visit Mobile as a volunteer, welcoming people and telling them all about Mobile. So she's a great resource in lots of ways, and we're lucky to have her today. We also have Angela King as the education curator of the museum. Hey, Angie. And so we're just lucky to have her. This is because of her. So we're going to hear from her later, but she's the reason we're all here to begin with. It's her idea. She started it all, so we're excited to have her. Dr. Adrienne Evans, our humanities chair at Bishop State and esteemed English and literature professor. There you are. Hey. Dr. LaShonda Robinson, also our literature and English professor at Bishop State, is here. Hey, hi.
Hi.
Dana Escobio, also an English professor at Bishop. Thank you. Here you are. We have Mary Elizabeth Kimbrough. It's our lead art instructor and art historian. Where are you, Mary Elizabeth? There you are. Renee Culler, who's also an art and art history teacher with us here today. Myself, also an art and art history teacher at Bishop. And finally, Lorene Peoples, where are you? Haha, there you are. She's going to kick us off today with an introduction. I'm going to switch this view into a speaker view. All right, and thank you, Miss Peoples. Take it away.
Okay. I'm just going to talk for just a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to turn the time over to our amazing boss, Dr. Evans, and she'll give you all a few tips on maybe some notes or what to do as you listen to the interview and the symposium today. I don't think I'd be making an overstatement to say that everyone on this panel is so thrilled to be here. And we are so pleased that you joined us to discuss this really important topic. And you may be looking at me and you may wonder, what does this white, middle-aged, soccer-esque looking mom know about racism and inequality? And I've thought that a lot. In fact, I've thought, who am I to introduce this topic? Well, the answer is I don't know enough. But every class and every semester, my students gently teach me and help me to better understand. And I so frequently read their experiences, their struggles, and their stories of unfair, harsh realities they face with tears streaming down my face. It just, every semester, it gets me. And our world has no room for cruelty and inequality. It can't be fought by one person or one race or even one community. The only way to win this battle is for all humans to commit to build a world where racism is disgraceful and equality is the standard. And it only happens if we all stand together and fight. Otherwise, we all lose. We have to fight together. And so it's a topic that we have to engage in as all of humanity. And I'll turn the time over to Dr. Evans.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Peoples, and good afternoon to everybody. It's wonderful to see you all here today. And I do thank you for joining us. I want also to express thanks to our distinguished guests today and to Mrs. Host for really arranging everything and keeping us all on task and making sure that today was possible. I do want to speak with our students because we have a really wonderful opportunity, thanks to Ms. Angie at the at Mobile Museum of Art, to showcase our writings, to get our students involved in that wonderful opportunity as well. And so you've been asked, of course, to interview persons who are in your families, your close circles, your friends, but persons who we don't always get to sit and listen and interview and talk and hear their stories. Because a lot of times we're running, we are doing whatever it is that we do, and we don't take the time often to sit and to hear those stories that and experiences that are, we think are very distant, but in truth are really very much like the ones that we are living in today. And so as you interview persons who were alive during the height of the civil rights movement, I want you definitely to be thinking about the Gordon Parks exhibit and what you've seen there, the kinds of images you've seen. But think about persons that you would want to interview who lived during segregation in the 50s and 60s, and ask them to tell you about their experiences. Really just sit there and listen with both your ears and listen with your whole heart. I say that all the time, not just your ears, but listen with your whole heart. But let them tell you about their experiences with injustices, with discrimination. And it could be racial discrimination. That was definitely a major issue. But think about even gender discrimination, age discrimination, size even discrimination, all kinds of things, intellectual disabilities and different abilities. Let them tell you their stories. Just be open. And so what I am asking, I don't know if Mrs. Host was able to put in some slides for me, but think in terms of as you write these narratives, I wanted you more to think of them as a reflection, if you will. And so we get a wonderful opportunity today to even sit and listen with Ms. Vani, who's going to share some of her experiences with us. And so she's really become part of the Bishop State family, even more so because of Central High School and just because of her roots and her willingness to be here and share and to impart in us today. But as you listen to these people, we want to demonstrate, of course, with Ms. Vani today, but think about briefly telling these people's stories. And so hopefully if everything goes the way that we pray it will, we'll be able to get an example paper or something like that today so that you get an idea of what we want you to do. But listen to these people as they share their stories with you. You may not be able to tell their whole stories, and that's not what we're looking for. We don't want all of their 80 years. But is there one incident in there that kind of sticks with you, that stands out? And then just share that event. So think of yourselves, I want you to think of yourselves as ethnographers, that you are going into the field. We are sending you there as persons going into the field, not necessarily knowing what you'll find. So you're not really going in except to sit and to be with people. But ask them questions. And then as you listen, ask more questions so that you're able to kind of arrange this story for us, because ultimately, I want you thinking about the opinions that you will form, how it is that you are being transformed. And I think in terms of what we would call a DIEP model, where with the D, you are describing what happened. So go in very briefly, share with us. And I don't want you thinking in terms of, the traditional 5-paragraph essay. We want it to be organized and structured, of course, but think of the intro. How do you want to introduce us to this person? And then your body paragraphs. How is it that you're developing their story? Interpret this whole event. That's the I portion here. You want to describe what's happened, but then interpret for the reader the event. What happened? Come up with some kind of interpretations evaluate. The E portion is evaluate the experience as it was beneficial to you. What kinds of things have you learned from just sitting and being in the presence of this person, probably even grandma or great grandma? So we want you to come out of this experience, evaluating this experience, knowing what it is that was beneficial to you. And then the P portion of it is to plan how it will affect your future. I've been sharing even with my own students as we dealt with narrative writing and reflection essays, that when we go and look into the mirror, and I think every one of us before we even came onto Zoom today spent some time probably looking in the camera, just trying to make sure, see what you could see, that kind of thing. We do all of that, not necessarily just to look into the mirror, but we want to make sure that we're together before we walk out. And so if there's something that's not quite right, we fix it, you know, that kind of thing. And so it's not enough to just sit in the presence of these people, but what is it that you are learning from them? How are you going to grow? What kinds of changes are you going to sit and look at Mobile today and say, you know, this is not really different than the Mobile that Parks was talking about or that he snapped about, those kinds of things. As you take photos even of persons, I do want you thinking in terms of, you have these wonderful little phones and things of that nature. Take candid shots of them, but you know, definitely take one where they are prepared and sitting there looking, but we also want to get some that they're not so prepared for as they're talking. Snap, you know, all of that. Record the events and make sure that you get permission, of course, to record it, but take copious notes. You want to have all of this, because ultimately the only eyes that we will see are yours. We'll get to see through your eyes, we'll get to hear through your ears. We will only get to know this person the way that you describe them. So we will spend a good bit of time today with Ms. Bonnie, and so we're excited. So I'm going to turn everything back over to Mrs. Host to give us that introduction so that we can move forward. And I challenge each of you, definitely our students, to be taking notes so that as we move through this next portion, if I am not able to come up with the essay, we will at least have an activity where we can kind of discuss what kinds of things that we heard and how we reacted to this. And so I'm excited for the rest of this day together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. That's awesome. Thanks. All right, so I do have some slides for you. So I'll put those up after the interview, by the way, and they'll reflect what you just said. And so I feel like you can kind of recap and kind of build on that. So I just want you to know, I think I got that working. And so with that said, I would love to hand this portion of the day over to Dana Escobio to interview our special guest, Miss Bonnie.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. It's such a beautiful day, and thank you all for being here, and thank you so much, Miss Bonnie, for meeting with us. So as Ms. Host mentioned, I'm Dana. My name is Dana Escobio, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and hopefully our students will see an example of how we might interview someone. That's great. That's awesome. But I think it's all of our hopes that hearing your experience will help us to continue to be kind to each other, to listen to each other, and to really learn from each other as well. So I want to say thank you in advance, Ms. Bonnie, so much for being with us today. And thank all of you for being here and for letting me be a part of it. So one question that we have is, Ms. Bonnie, as you walked through the exhibit, what crossed your mind? Hello? Oh.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you now. Can everyone hear Ms. Bonnie?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Her connection bad.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, walking with exhibit. Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear
Want to try
me?
again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, but
Hello?
yes, I think we can hear
Hello?
you. Miss Lydia,
Hey,
can you hear her okay? Yes. So when you walked through the exhibit, what went through your mind? What crossed your mind?
Well, most of the pictures that I observed by Garden Parks was taken in 1950 years old. However, it took me back to the time that I grew up in, with especially Blacks or African American families playing outdoors, going on the line, sitting on the front porch. It really a sense of what family was like, which I think right now our families really
Oh, hey, Miss Bonnie, can you
see
hear me?
photos
Oh.
displayed with Garden Park.
Hey, Miss
Sweet.
Miss
You
Bonnie.
know, we belong a big. I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, your voice keeps going in and out, if that's true for
Yes.
everybody else. So what I was wondering is if
Oh,
maybe you just turn off
Now,
yeah, you're better now. Is ever better for everybody? Even if we just can hear you, that's the most important thing. So maybe if you turn off your camera part and just talk. How about that? We'll see if that maybe lowers, because it says your bandwidth is low on the screen.
okay. That, okay, I'm okay. Okay, let me turn off my camera part.
That makes your voice better.
Okay, let's see here. Okay.
But
Hmm. So I'm looking to turn off my
yeah, it's okay. Maybe if
video.
you tap your screen, it might come up as an option.
Hmm. Oh, wow.
Well, right now it looks like your screen is off, actually, from my point of view.
Okay. Okay.
And I hear
So
you.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you better now. Yes, I think that's good. Thank you. I think that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So did that answer the question? Did that answer the question that was just presented?
Well, I think we only heard some of it because of the
Yes.
sketchiness. So if you wouldn't mind just repeating that, that would be great, actually.
No, I was saying as I walked into the exhibit, it was most of those photos were taken 1956. I was 7 years old. So it took me back to the time I grew up, where people did a lot of outside activities. They did a lot of family things, sitting on the porch, hanging out clothes. Particularly just a reminder of the colored water fountain and the white water fountain. It just, there were a lot of bittersweet moments that I could reflect on. So we've come a long ways, but it brought back a lot of memories during my earlier years in my life.
Great. I think
Did
we
you
can hear
hear
you
me?
better. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think we heard you that time. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, was
Okay,
there a
so did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. I think so.
Pardon me?
Yes, yes, that worked. Good. When you walked through the exhibit, did any particular photo stand out to you?
Yes, the one with the colored only sign really stood out to me because I had the experience of actually going upstairs in the Sanger Theater during that time with that sign being up. And the reflection that I have at that time, I guess that's the way it was. I I didn't question it because that was the environment that we were presented to us. However, after being back in Mobile 15 years later, my first time going was 15 years ago, which I cried because I had never been downstairs. And I went to Giovanni speak during Black History Month, and the University of South Alabama presented a program. And I cried because I had never been downstairs. So we've come a long ways, but that's the photo that really caught my attention.
Okay, well, we do have just a few more questions for you. What were some differences between living in Mobile and then living in Chicago?
Well, there's a really big difference. In Chicago, of course, it's a big urban city. So there are many demands and many needs that Mobile, being a southern, smaller municipality, just doesn't give us the same kind of lifestyle. So in Chicago, with it being an urban things like commuting, transportation, food and culinary choices, uh, culture and diversity, education, school activities. It's just a big difference. Mobile is more, um, the foods are different. The climate is different. The weather has a great impact, like now with the snow, and we got sunshine today with just cool temperatures. So there's just a big difference in lifestyles and, social justice. It's just a big difference.
Um, would you say that things have changed? How have things changed in Mobile?
Things have changed somewhat, but we're still on. Uh, there's room for improvement, but things have changed tremendously. And I can say I got to witness one of my high school classmates, Sam Jones, got to be mayor for 2 terms. And I mean, we can basically go to any place to eat or use the bathrooms, or, the sky's the limit. You just have to have that risk taker and be open-minded to as a person of color. So room for improvement.
Miss Bonnie, can you think of some things that have not changed in Mobile?
I think some of the culture, I think the diversity in Mobile probably needs to be corrected a little more. I think economic crises plays a big role in what, especially the younger generation, we're not, I think education can be improved on this level so everybody would be on an equal basis in terms of educating our young people and our youth. And the opportunities still aren't as great as it could be in certain areas. Your question?
Yes, but
Oh,
the
okay.
part of your answer was a little hard to hear you. So just the last few sentences, we couldn't really hear you, I think. When you were talking about,
We can improve on- Okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I think we heard most of your answer, but towards the end, you were fading out just a little bit. But we
Okay,
did hear
did you
you.
hear the education part? I just think
Yes.
all the public schools should
Yes.
have a better education standard learning. That's my biggest thing here, that the young people all need to have the same opportunities to learn and get.
Yes. That's yeah, I think that's your main point, and we're
Did
all
you hear? Did you?
yes, about the necessary changes we need to see in educational opportunities for all of our. Thank you. Um, Lastly, I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important aspect in creating some real positive change?
Well, I think each community need to be more involved in their own community. I think Mobile has tons of churches. The churches should reach out to making improvements. And I think that people just need to be concerned about, like I said, their own communities. If it starts like in small groups of people, and I think it takes a village to raise a child or to improve your situation. I think maybe when the COVID crisis is over, just giving your input to the city council meetings, just being a little bit more proactive in what human kind and mankind presents for us to exist in this world. I just think everybody needs to focus on equal opportunity to improve Mobile. There's Mobile is really a diamond in the rough, and if everybody just step up and do one little thing to make it better, I think this will be a wonderful place to live and to raise children.
You make it sound like it's something that maybe we all could do, that one little thing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your answers, Ms. Bonnie. It's really given us a lot to think about. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your insight with all of us. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and if I'm around here for good home, I take care of my 96-year-old dad, and anything I could do to help Mobilians, I'm here for them. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. I think that Dr. Evans is going to talk to us. Lydia, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I'm just going to screen share now, if that's okay. I'll pull up the slide and hopefully I have this close to being in a good place. I think that if that's okay with you, Dr. Evans, kind of reiterating, I guess, what you talked about before. Can everybody see the slide that I'm sharing? Or okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Bonnie. That was great. And thank you so much, Mrs. Scobio, too. And Dr. Evans, I hand it to you. And I'll switch to the next slide whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Host. Thank you to Ms. Bonnie and Mrs. Scobio. So just a very quick round of questions and answers. And let me just make sure, yeah, you are able to see me. Okay. I lost me for a moment. Okay, I'm back there. So any reactions, reflections that you may want to share just in hearing this interview from our students? Any questions that you wanted to pose or anything that just kind of stood out in your mind? Don't be shy, it's okay. Okay. So someone was trying to say something. I didn't quite catch that. Mrs. Hosty, do you see?
I think that might be Miss Bonnie saying something. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, but well, one of the things, and so I won't necessarily belabor this, but I do want to just remind you, even in what we heard today, Ms. Bonnie has said a lot. She's taken us from Mobile, she's taken us to Chicago, she's brought us back to Mobile, and just kind of seeing what kinds of things are there. And so again, as you reflect and write the narrative, of course, I won't include the photo at all today because I didn't get to shift around and take that quick screenshot. But remember, describe what happened. I do want to share with you that whatever it is that you heard, whatever thing that moved you, whatever statement that moved you or struck a chord with you is important. It resonates with you for a particular reason. And so your experiences, you know, I was even, and I'll just share my very brief piece that I was able to write as she was moving through that interview. But even in hearing that, the Sanger Theater is one of my favorite places to be. And so, you know, just even seeing her on the floor, on the orchestra portion of that theater, I got excited just hearing that, you know, she's moved to tears just having that opportunity. Well, for me, I probably could not even imagine not getting to go in and buy my ticket and sit on the orchestra or sit on the front row, even if, you know, that's where I wanted to sit. And so just hearing that kind of helps me to understand. And there's not a whole lot of years between the two of us, but getting to hear that kind of experience, you know, I am like, wow. And what changes we have been able to see take place, and the number of people who have been instrumental in making sure that I get to enjoy the kind of life that I get to enjoy today, and what responsibilities I have to help people enjoy even a better life than the one that I enjoy today. And so it's that kind of issue that I want to share with you today, just as I was listening. And so I do want to, you know, give this disclaimer. It's only 3 paragraphs. I wasn't able to write a whole, and so normally we would be, you know, revising and all of that. So I don't want you to think that I've gone through the writing process completely. So don't judge the English instructor today. Please don't. All right, so I've not come up even with a title, but normally if I were writing, because writing I think is recursive, I would wait until I finished and everything is whatever I want it to be. And so then I would write even my title, but something that kind of relates to or summarizes what the paper is about. And so this may or may not have a thesis statement. I don't know where it's going with this, but just hear the thoughts and hear what at least has just kind of struck a chord with me in hearing Miss Vonnie. All right, so again, don't judge. All right, so if we take opportunity to stop, to dialogue with, and listen to people among us, we are likely to learn that there are more heroes and sheroes, if you will, in our own families and close circles than we would ever imagine. Such was the case when a colleague, Lydia Host, and her class visited the Mobile Museum of Art. There she met a young lady who has since become a close member of the Bishop State Community College family, Mrs. Vonnie McMillan Jameson. In an interview conducted by Mrs. Dana Escobio, an instructor in the English department at Bishop State, Mrs. Vonnie makes it clear that she has led and continues to lead a full life, and taking time to share some of those experiences with the students of Bishop State in Mobile, Alabama, was the highlight of the inaugural Social Justice and the Arts Zoom-posium held the first week of the 2021 Black History Month celebration events. Reflecting on a new exhibit featuring the works of photographer Gordon Parks at the Mobile Museum of Arts, Mrs. Vonnie's candid discussion led attendees in considering an all-important question: has life in the United States, but especially in Mobile, changed at all over the past 50 years? Mrs. Vonnie explained that in one incident, that walking through the Gordon Parks exhibit took her back to a time when she was 7 years old, a time when people would spend much time outside, but there was always looming the time when she would see colored and white water fountains, or blacks, whites only, or colored only. Mrs. Vonnie recalled a time specifically when she visited the Sanger Theater and having to go upstairs because that's where Blacks were allowed to sit. And she explained that when she returned to Mobile after having lived in Chicago for 15 years, how she remembered crying when visiting the Sanger Theater for a Giovanni concert. That I could never have imagined, tears streaming down my face because I was allowed to sit in a particular place. There is an adage that warns the more things change, the more things stay the same. And perhaps nowhere is this more true than here in the United States, where, according to Mrs. Vonnie, it is clear that things have changed, that progress has been made, but there's still much work to do. She explained that although she has witnessed even one of her classmates, Sam Jones, who is the former Mobile mayor of Mobile, and although people can sit anywhere in restaurants or go to restrooms as they please, it is obvious that there is still room for change. This is where I sensed the importance of Mrs. Vonnie passing the baton to us and to those who will come after us. Mrs. Vonnie explained a truth: that we must become more proactive in helping humankind to be the best they can be. Mobile, our city, is a diamond in the rough, she said. And if we all do our part to make it better, it absolutely would be the best place to live and raise our families. I am so committed to making that happen. And so it is that kind of thing. We just simply want to know, what is it that you hear as you go in, and remember, your experiences will matter because they are yours. Whatever your experiences, don't ever be ashamed to own them, to take them as yours, because they're yours. They help you to be who you are. But then, even as you listen to these people in your families, don't be afraid or ashamed of their stories. They help them to be who they are. They help you to be who you are. And so let's listen to them. Let's reflect on what we've heard, but then also evaluate and plan what it is, how it is I want to contribute to making this world the world that I want it to be. I do remind you that, in counseling, we've this statement that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I do want you to be part of the change that will help our society, our world, this globe to be what it can be. All right. Thank you much.
Okay, wow, Dr. Evans, thank you. Are you guys in awe of her brain and the ability to put all that together, just having listened to that? Thank you so much, Dr. Evans. That was really, really wonderful. And I'm sorry, I feel like this slide is a little behind now, but it's still great. So I feel like you were mesmerizing, and I'm just blown away. Thank you. And so next, what I would like us to move on and look at and listen, Dr. Robinson, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit of a perspective I'm just gonna let you take it away from here, Dr. Robinson.
Can you all hear me? Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. I think Dr. Evans's statements towards the end were powerful. This whole idea of owning your experiences and not being ashamed or afraid to express them, very powerful. When I think about the African American experience, if there is the or one, because I think that there are actually many, but if we look at them as a whole, the role of storytelling is so important throughout the entire culture. And so we're talking about writing narratives, writing reflections. For my students, you have the memoir, on our particular syllabus. But the power of telling your story is real. It gives you power. It empowers you to reach other people. And for so long as African Americans, people of color in this country, that power was not available. And so there were so many ways that we had to sort of reroute to get our stories told, and often they just simply were not. So I want you to think about, but not just even African American experiences, because I know a lot of you are not African American. You're probably thinking, well, do I have to hunt down like a Black person to interview or something? No, you don't. Think about, mama, your grandparents and all of those people around you, the aunts and uncles, who have specific, points of view, about that era. It doesn't just have to come from, say, a Black person per se, but those stories are important. Because when we hear those stories, like I said, they take us into that space and they help us to understand what was happening. I know we've all heard, if we don't know the history, then we're destined to repeat it. And we hear that a lot. It's a common expression. So I want you to think about that, and the stories that you may hear from others. But today, my job is actually to bring you a story from Gordon Parks himself. The beauty of Gordon Parks, and I guess I'll show you this picture if you can see it. This is Gordon Parks, in case you were wondering. Some of my students are like, who, what? It just so happens that I had this coffee book, a huge book of his work, and it's like a retrospective of his life's work that I bought probably over 20 years ago, because I was just fascinated with his ability to tell stories through his photographs. But he was also an avid writer, and he journaled a lot. So he had all of these diary entries and all of these writings. And every time he would go out to take photographs, he would actually record his thoughts, and so we have a wealth of not only his visual art, but we also have his own words. And so today I'll read a journal entry, a diary that he wrote shortly after. Can you hear Sam? Yeah, I see somebody in chat. I'm reading for you today a diary entry that he actually wrote upon leaving Alabama. And so I want you to think about it this way, because I know most of us, even I couldn't imagine not being able to express myself. I couldn't imagine, somehow being threatened or in danger, for taking pictures or for expressing the thoughts about the things that I see, about the events that I see around me. But that was the exact situation that he was facing when he came to Alabama to actually do this project. So those of you who've gotten a chance to see the museum exhibit, you have a better idea. But those of you who have not, those photos that he took in Mobile are actually a part of a larger collection of photographs that he took on a 2-week journey through Alabama. And so after leaving Mobile, he actually ended up in a different area called Shady Grove. And he experienced some things while he was here. And so I'll start reading from this particular portion, just to read and give you an idea of what was happening and what was at stake with this particular man trying to express his art, okay? It's titled Segregation in the South, okay? Segregation in the South, notes from a diary. It's 1956. I'm in Shady Grove, a Black section of Choctaw County, Alabama. My assignment, segregation in the Deep South, has kept me driving around the state of Alabama for nearly 2 weeks. Night has fallen in this dusty countryside where I just escaped a band of hostile white men who are searching for me. I backed away from several situations earlier after being warned that these men were awaiting my arrival. I realize now that their informant was the same person who was assigned to assist me down here. I'm lying in hiding in the darkness of a shanty owned by Black woodcutter Willie Causey, whose family I've chosen as the centerpiece of this assignment. And while the family sleeps, my thoughts swirl around the tragedies that brought me here. Just a few miles down the road, the Klansmen are burning and shooting Blacks and bombing their churches. Southland is afire, and lying here in the dark, hunted, I feel death crawling the dusty roads. The silence is spattered with fear. I fled Choctaw County over a back road 2 nights later. After reaching Birmingham at dawn, I took the first plane to New York. Not until it roared upward did I breathe easily. When my story was published a month later, the sparse comforts of Willie Causey's family self-destructed like buckshot. The same Choctaw County citizens who had hunted for me stripped Willie of all his possessions and then, using brutal restraints, ran him and his wife and 6 children out of town with a threat ringing in his ear. It's the rope for you if you try coming back. In New York, a collect call from Willie informed me of his plight. Life acted promptly, sending the family $25,000 to help them resettle in another part of the South. 2 of the magazine's editors, Hugh Moffett and Richard Stoley, went to Choctaw County with the hope of getting Willie's property returned to him. Several men with shotguns stood outside the mayor's house when they arrived. Mrs. Rose McPherson, a spirited, wealthy widow who ran things around the county, was there too. And she was blunt. It's burrheads like Willie that's causing trouble for the whites. I ought we to ship every one of them back to Africa. One of the men left the editors with these parting words. That nigger that took them pictures is mighty damn lucky. If we caught him, we would have tarred and feathered him. Looking back now to the Black Revolution of the 1960s, I realize why we refuse to wait for justice any longer, especially from the Supreme Court. Only after a long struggle did it outlaw school segregation. But even then, Black children would still be harassed by white mobs before entering school. Even then, federal troops had to be brought in to escort them to their desks, while lynch 'em thundered through the corridors. When Rosa Parks was jailed for not giving her seat to a white man on an Alabama bus, the sit-ins would arrive. As one group wiped away blood and spit, another one walked in to suffer more blood and spit. When the Freedom Riders began their terror-filled forays into the deepest South, their buses were firebombed, their windows smashed, tires slashed, and their young riders beaten. A bomb exploded inside a Birmingham church and 4 Black children died. In Mississippi, a white Southerner aimed his gun at the back of Medgar Evers, the civil rights leader, and hit his mark. White police waited with guns, clubs, water hoses, and dogs to wreak havoc on his mourners. But armed only with our Blackness against this violence, we kept marching on. And so when you look at these exhibits and you see these photographs, I want you to think about this man's experiences, chronicling what was happening in Mobile, in Alabama, in the South at this time. He risked his life to take the photograph that you're seeing right now of this woman and her grandchild standing outside of a segregated department store looking at clothing. I don't think any one of us thinks about any of this. I certainly don't think about this. I was listening to Miss Vonnie describing her experiences at the Sanger, and she immediately brought me to the Sanger Theater a few years ago. I haven't been there in a while, but I think the last time I was there, I had gone to see Yo-Yo Ma, who's like my favorite play cellist. He's just great. He's wonderful. And I remember walking in and getting settled there in that seat on the floor, kind of in the middle, because I couldn't afford to be on the front row. Those tickets were expensive. But never once did I question my right or ability to be there. And I sat there and I enjoyed every bit of that moment, of that experience. And I just could not imagine, as Dr. Evans said, not having, the opportunity to. And so that blew me away. And I appreciate you, Ms. Vonnie, for sharing that. Ms. Lydia Host.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Wow. I'm kind of overcome with that reading. That was really such powerful, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. It's really beautiful. Wow. Okay, y'all. What I'd like to pass on now to Miss Kimbrough, Mary Elizabeth, if you're ready to tell us a little bit more about Gordon Parks, I'd like to hand it over to you. Well, oops, sorry. Mary Elizabeth, are you there? All right. Well, we knew that things would go kind of wacky sometimes. I guess that this may be one of those times, but I'm just, let's see. I'll see if I can find her in the.
I think she's still muted. She's
okay.
there.
Oh, she's there. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, you're muted, Mary
She
Elizabeth.
needs to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Mary Elizabeth, you're muted. Could you unmute?
There we go. I'll ask her to unmute.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Great. Okay.
Okay, can y'all hear me now? Yeah, okay, good. I'm Mary Elizabeth Kimbrough and I teach art at Bishop State. I want to approach this from the visual art point of view, as Dr. Robinson and Dr. Evans both approached it from the writing point of view. And of course, we are talking about more than, when we talk about Gordon Parks, we talk about a man who really embraced a lot of arts. He was a writer, he was a photographer, he was a filmmaker. And the quote I always share with my students the first day of class is, art is not about art, art is about life. And I feel like Gordon Parks really exemplifies this concept because the art that he created, whether it was writing, whether it was photography, or whether it was filmmaking, absolutely deals with his life. And art can be pretty pictures, but it is primarily a method of communication. Parks, a self-taught photographer, filmmaker, and writer, used his many gifts to bring awareness to the American dilemma of racism. Raised in a time when no opportunity existed for him, he left home while he was just barely a kid. He was 15, struck out on his own. The only things he had on his side were his intellect, his determination, his talent, and his fierce artistic abilities. He ended up working for the most important American magazine, Life magazine, and his editor sent him to Mobile in 1956 to document segregation. I'm sharing a few of his images with you here. And the picture you see, of course, is Gordon Parks himself, who was really a handsome man, I have to say. And look at him with his camera. It's like he has a third eye, and it's on his shoulder. It's a part of his body. He becomes a witness, not just a witness through his eyes, but he can record and witness history. Can you go ahead and take me to the next slide, Lydia? Thank you. This is a really famous photograph that Gordon Parks took of a cleaning lady, and she is posed, she's from Chicago. She's posed in front of the American flag with the tools of her trade, And it's a takeoff on the famous painting by Grant Wood called American Gothic. And I'm going to read you a quote from Gordon Parks. I chose my camera as a weapon against all the things I dislike about America: poverty, racism, discrimination, Gordon Parks asserted. Parks' defining characteristic was to put the ugliest part of America front and center. And I think we often think of visual art as being pretty and decorative. This is not necessarily ever the purpose of art. The purpose of art is communication. And Parks is communicating the things that disturb him, the things that he finds unacceptable. Just as here, as he poses this woman who works hard, probably for very little money, and she poses in front of the flag, the American flag, which stands for liberty and justice for all. And for her, there is no liberty and justice for all, for her and for people who look like her. Parks knew that his images could help create the changes that came in the 1960s with the passage of the Civil Rights Act. His images support his desire for a fairer and more equitable, if you want to go to the next one, Lydia, America. When you see the photos I have chosen to show, recognize that Parks was a gifted photojournalist. The reason I have the Marilyn Monroe picture is to show you that he often had to work as a photographer. He had to go take pictures of celebrities and events. So this picture is really a professional kind of image that is different from the images he took in Mobile. He's just taken a picture of a celebrity like any photographer, regardless of their race. He could tell a story with his images so well that they require no words. Now this one, of course, there's Malcolm X. And Malcolm X is sort of a bridge between his career as a photojournalist and a person who was interested in pointing out racism in America. And so he gets both out of this picture. And also notice that Parks was a witness to history. He was there to take pictures of things that happened that were important and that are memorable in American history. And that's because he was such a good photographer and a professional. I think there's one more, Lydia. The last one, I just chose this one, y'all, because it reminded me of the pictures in Mobile. And I wanted to use pictures that are different from the ones in the museum so that you could be exposed to some more of his work. And one of the things he does in some of his photographs is show us the really beautiful lives of African Americans that are full of dignity, full of beauty, full of sweet, precious moments, just like anybody else would want. And so I think this one is really a hopeful, positive, happy image. The little girls in their dancing costumes. One little girl in the front is just smiling and so happy. And these are children who are not being, that we know of, restricted from something, but allowed to pursue their dreams, and a dream here that involves the arts. So I wanted to finish with that one. And I want to thank y'all for giving me the chance to be a part of this. This is a person I really admire. And I'd like to next bring Angie King to y'all's attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things to Ms. Kimbrough's talk about Gordon Parks. One of the unique things about this particular show is that it is in color. I don't know if that really struck you when you saw it, but he did that very intentionally because it was not common for people to use color photographs. And one of the reasons that he did was to bring the element of humanity to these people. And you know, it's just got a different feel when you see full color, something that you haven't seen before, especially when you think about like the images of Malcolm X. And a lot of those were, you know, things that you would see in magazines or newspapers. And this is something you didn't see was people just living their lives in full color and how it really looked. So that it was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a magic, I think, that he was the one that came down, and I think he was very uniquely qualified to really show the story of these people. And I encourage you definitely to go and look at some of the places in Mobile. Of course, we have the sign from the Sanger Theater, and I think that's such a powerful thing because you see it in a photograph, but when you see it right there in front of you, it really makes it very real. And the show is going to be up until September, so you have plenty of time to come back. I would encourage you to come back and look. When we will have some other things going up. I said earlier, Thursdays are free for Mobile County residents. We do have student memberships too. If you're really interested, then that gets you in all the time. As far as this project, I thank you, Dr. Evans and Ms. Robinson and Ms. Kimbrough, and everybody for just jumping on board with this and running with it. I think I'm really excited to see what you come up with. And I would say, you know, Dr. Evans mentioned earlier doing some posed shots and then doing some shots that are just, you know, when they're not paying attention, kind of not staged. And there's some of a bit of both of that in the show. And, you know, I would just say, go with what moves you. If there's something in particular that this person talks about, or there's something maybe that you want to show in their home, just really focus on that. I think that's it.
Thank you.
And I will let you know too, when we get everybody's stuff in, we're going to format it all, you know, how we want it to look on the wall. And then we will definitely have a time when everybody can come and see their work, which will be exciting.
Very much so. And Angie, one of the things that I wanted to mention too, that you mentioned to me that I just want, is that you would be open to poetry, you mentioned, or different creative writing. I think I just wanted you to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, and of course do the assignment for your teachers too, but yeah, if you like poetry, absolutely. We would love to have poetry or creative writing, something that's more creative and kind of what touches you. It doesn't have to be just factual, this person said this. Really put yourself into your work.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here, Angie.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks so much for collaborating with Bishop State for this. We're so excited. I know I'm excited to see what our students will come up with as well. And I look forward to going and seeing it in the museum. Thank you for inviting us and sharing and giving us this opportunity. And so, yeah, I think that, I mean, y'all, I think we've hit our time. If we're good, if anybody have any questions about anything, I guess before we close out, I would be happy to have anybody ask any questions, of maybe a lingering question for Vonnie or Angie or Dr. Evans or Dr. Robinson. Does anybody have a question before we say goodbye? No. I read somewhere that you're supposed to wait 11 seconds on Zoom, you know, for people to ask a question. So I don't know. But I don't see anything in chat either. But thanks so much for coming, y'all. Thank you so much for all of your expertise. I feel so just encouraged and moved and uplifted from this afternoon. So thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all come up with and what you do. I appreciate you, Vonnie and Angie, for being our special guests, and of course our esteemed panel as well. So have a great afternoon. I'll see you guys soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
All right.